Hello and welcome back to Dr. Freda's Power Session, where we stop performing growth and start living it. I'm Dr. Freda, and this is a space for real conversation about self trust, emotional intelligence, and what it actually takes to lead yourself through life and love. Here, we don't rush healing, we don't sugarcoat truth and we don't confuse awareness with transformation. Power isn't about having it all together. It's about being honest enough to show up differently with yourself first. Every session is an invitation to pause, reflect, and choose alignment over autopilot. Now, let's get into today's session. In today's session, we're talking about stop romanticizing your struggle because at some point, survival stops saving us and starts shaping our identity. Now, joining me today is Kim Anderson, and I am really glad that Kim is here to join us in this conversation. And before we even jump into any questions or anything like that, Kim, I want you to tell our listeners today a little bit about the work you do and what pulled you to this industry.
Mm. Well, amen. Thank you for having me. And boy, oh boy, was that introduction, not my introduction, but the introduction of the episode just so powerful. So I'm just so honored to be here with you and your listeners as we just really dive into some really needed, necessary conversations. Okay. So
Mm.
I'll say that first and foremost. So truly an honor and a pleasure for me to be here. Yeah, I actually got involved in this work with me, with myself.
Mm.
The journey of becoming a better woman, a better person, a better human started for me over 30 years ago. And at that time, Frida, it was a mess. And I'm sure, you know, I am really relatable in that regard. I think I made every possible mistake a young woman can make. And I still somehow, through the goodness of the Lord, but somehow managed to come out on the other side of it whole, healed, and sort of ready and able to deal with my life.
Mm.
And so you tell me how far you want me to go right now, because I can go back and I can bring it up and we can sort of bring it to today,
Yeah.
and then talk about the lessons learned along the way and why it was so important. How about that?
Yes, yeah, and I have some
Okay,
other questions but yes,
sure.
tell us like, because our conversation can help so many other people, male or
Okay,
female, that can relate to you.
true. True. And so for me, 30 plus years ago, I look back and I was completely lost. I found myself in a situation, and it's funny because the situation I was in 30 years ago is kind of glorified now. But to
Mm,
me, I feel like that's part of the inversion. We flipped what's an ideal situation and try to romanticize it. But for me, 30 years ago, when I found myself an unwed mother, um, having a child out of wedlock with the gentleman who had no thoughts of marrying me. I was also unemployed. And I'm looking around and I'm like, what? How did I get here? Why is this my life? And oh my God, what can I do to get out of it? Like, how can I transform this? I don't know if my thoughts at that time were that extravagant, but I
mhm,
was so full of shame. I was
mm,
but my self-esteem was as low as it could get. I was embarrassed that here I was, a person that had done some really cool things in her early 20s. I had worked in the NBA, and so I had some things going for me. I worked for two NBA teams. So I was almost like a pioneer and a trendsetter in that regard. Cause people were like, how did you even think to even want to work in the NBA? And
mhm,
it was just something that was within me. So I had this like sort of career trajectory that was looking really amazing.
mhm,
But then I
yeah,
went and sabotaged my whole self and got
Mm.
pregnant in the midst of all of that, not marrying the guy. And you can kind of read in between the lines when I tell you the industry I was in, the type of men that I was around. Okay. So
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm not going to glorify that part, but you can kind of put two and two together and go, oh, she was working in professional sports and boom, she ends up getting pregnant out of wedlock. Well, so there you go. And so
Mm.
that person, bless his heart, he was never going to marry me. And as I look back, rightfully so, because I wasn't the type of woman that could have pulled the desire for marriage because my mindset was completely out of whack.
Mm.
So I was in that situation. I'm looking around and I am so embarrassed, so shameful. And here get this part too. Of how deeply I had embarrassed my family,
Mm.
because if you've got a young daughter in her early 20s who's breaking barriers and working in the NBA, can you imagine how much esteem my parents and my grandparents and cousins and everybody that knew me, the esteem that they were getting because of the doors that I had walked through way before anybody else ever thought of it?
Wait a minute. Wait 1 minute. I'm sorry to interrupt, Kim, but you said something really powerful because this is a lot of people are going through this right now. So I need you to go back, and I would love for you to clarify. You said that you were a pioneer in your industry of female, a black woman breaking down barriers in the NBA, working in the NBA, got pregnant by someone in
A
that
person.
industry,
Hmm.
right? But then you said, I mean, so you intellectually on paper, like your resume, you got it. But then you said, but he wasn't going to marry you, and rightfully so, because of your mindset wasn't
Hmm.
able to even pull out that wife. What do you mean about that? When you said, so on paper you look great. You doing it. You
Mm,
breaking down barriers, right?
mm,
But your mindset is not where it need or where you wanted it to be to pull
mm,
out the love life. Can you explain that
mm.
more?
Yeah, because when I look my even in being that, like on the one hand, I was very confident about my sports knowledge, my ability to be in that realm. I was very confident in that
Mhm.
to work because I worked in community relations for the Atlanta Hawks, and then I went back to my hometown of Detroit and worked for the Pistons in public relations and community relations. So we
Mhm.
were always out in the community. So we were doing good things. We were sort of the face of the franchise when it came to meeting reporters and corporate sponsors and so I was very confident in my ability there. Like
Mhm.
I had been preparing all my life for that. Sports was my love. So being in that arena didn't phase me really at all. Like I just was like, yeah, and everyone that knew me thought that that was a natural progression for me to work in professional sports because I was the sports chick before there were sports chicks. And so
Mhm.
people was and you could ask growing up, they were like, yeah, well, of course, I'm not surprised Kim was working in the NBA. Like that was just sort of my personality. So that was a natural progression.
Mhm.
Now, the inward Kim about who she was outside of that identity,
Mm.
like I knew that I was attractive, but
Mhm.
what was that based on? Like
Mm.
it wasn't my character.
Mhm.
It wasn't my integrity that hadn't been developed yet.
Mm.
So all I had was kind of like sports knowledge. Okay, so put that aside. But when it
Mhm.
came down to what kind of woman am I? How do I
Mm.
carry myself as a woman? What do I believe I deserve?
Mm.
What's
There you
what's
go.
my
There you go.
what's my level as far
Mhm.
as relationships go? Because see,
Mm.
if I was the person I am now, then I would have never attracted that guy.
Mm.
You understand? That's how I know, rightfully so, he shouldn't have married me. Like, it would have been a disaster because even with that, my esteem in that area was so low and
Mm,
so questionable that I didn't feel I deserved like long-term commitment relationship. I didn't think that that was and here's the real deal. I didn't really think that was possible
mm,
because my parents divorced when I was 2.
mhm,
I never grew up with my father in the household, so it was always a single parent. I saw my aunts and uncles all go through divorce. I saw my father marry a couple times. I saw my mother marry a couple times. So like, so there was, and God bless them. But I'm just saying, like the
mhm,
lessons that I was seeing was like really like, how is this even going to be sustainable? So
mm,
it's not even really worth me developing
mm,
a sense of self about it because I mean, it's really not a real thing. Like,
mm,
how can it be real for me? How could I even think that that would be real for me? Because I had, if I look at my grandparents, I saw that my grandparents stayed together,
mhm,
but I don't know that they were like happy or that they were in love. Like, okay, so real talk, like my maternal grandparents had separate beds. So it wasn't
mm,
even like, like it just didn't seem like something to aspire to.
mhm,
So I'm all jacked up in my thought process about what a real relationship could look like.
mm, mm,
So how could I even present that?
mm,
I here I am and I am someone that you should desire to marry. It's not even I wasn't even thought process now. Here's someone who might be available for a hookup. Yeah, that's kind of how I was. That's kind of what I was putting out
yeah.
literally, right? So like I can't even say figuratively, like naturally, that was the energy and aura that I had.
But is it safe to say, because you said earlier that this is the we're romanticizing this now, right?
Right.
Like you see a lot of, baby mamas and like NFLs and NBAs and baseball. There's no shame or nothing like that. Like, get your bag, sis. But the point is,
But the
like,
point
the
is,
point, but do you think that socially now we are weighing heavily on the external and not developing the internal? Meaning, if you look a certain way, you go and do the surgeries, you do the makeups, you get the weaves, the hair, whatever you want to do, and everything like that.
mhm,
Externally, you are aesthetically pleasing, but internally, you're
right,
still a mess.
right,
And it's like putting lipstick on a pig, if for using that
right,
analogy, right?
exactly, exactly.
And so you said this happened 30 years ago for you. This was just like shame, embarrassment, because I come from the school too. Don't mess up your parents' name. Don't be out here in these streets making me
Right,
look crazy.
exactly,
So
exactly.
I come from that same school too. But now, do you think socially it's becoming more acceptable to chase the bag and not chase self first?
Absolutely, because here's what I discovered, and you can probably follow along with this, is that once I got out of the madness, right? Once
Mm-hmm.
I stepped back and really just began to look at what what my situation was, I discovered that it was all me.
Mm-mm. How did you do that? Wait a minute. You skipping steps?
I know I am,
Kim,
but okay,
Kim, we got too many people. Look, let me tell you something. When did you know? When did that aha moment, that light bulb come on? Was it like 10 years later? Was it like God brought you to your knees? What happened? What was that?
okay, so I'm gonna answer that first question first. Is that yes, society has started romanticizing baby mamas, baby mama drama, and
Mm,
when I would see that, it would make me cringe because it
mm,
was the exact wrong message.
mm,
Because nobody wants to be a baby mama because
mm,
that means daddy gone, right? And that means that child isn't getting what they need, which is both parents present in the home for real.
mm,
Okay. So that being said, when I stopped and took inventory of where I was, and it was a process. So I want to say my son was born, and praise God he was a son,
Mhm.
because it, if it had been a daughter, I might have thought I could skate by, right? Like I might have
Mm,
thought I could figure it out and I could do what I needed to do. But since it was a
mm,
son, I was
mm,
like, whoa, boy,
mm,
what am I going to do? So with that, my process took about 2.5 years, really, from start to from the time I just wanted to get out of the pain to the time that
mm,
I met my husband and got engaged. I want to say it was about 2.5 years.
mm.
And
Okay.
so in hindsight, not a lot of time,
Yeah.
but going through it, I initially started with the thought I wasn't doing it to find someone or have someone find me. I
Mhm.
was just doing it so I could stop hurting.
What did that hurt look like and feel like for you?
It was the shame, the embarrassment, the
Mm,
not knowing, not having a clue what to do to get out. Like,
mm,
how do I make this stop? How how do I stop feeling, really, when I get back down to it, how do I stop feeling bad about myself? How
mm,
do I how do I correct the mistakes I have made? And hear me, my son wasn't the mistake. The
exactly.
situation I brought him into
Mm,
based on my mistakes is what was wrong.
mm,
I brought him I allowed him to come into the world without an active father, with a
mm,
mother who was unemployed, who didn't have a clue about what to do.
mm,
Just I brought him into those circumstances. And I remember my grandmother told me one time, praise the Lord for grandmothers. My grandmother told me, I was, once again, I was just so embarrassed. And my grandmother said, she said, Kim, I've lived a long time. I've seen a lot of things. And I was like, yeah. And so she said, you made a mistake.
mm,
And she said, don't make another one.
mm,
I said, okay. I was like, okay. Like, and I think when she said that to me, I don't know, he may have been 6 months old. I don't know how old he was. But when she said that, don't make another one, right? Like, we
mm,
can forgive you for this one. But
mm,
if this becomes a lifestyle, can't nobody, I mean, like, that's it. You made a
mm,
mistake, acknowledge it, don't make
mm,
another one.
mm, mm,
So I was like, okay.
mm,
Okay, I got it. I got it. And so, you know, with every willpower that I had, I started going to church, because I don't know what you do when
yeah.
you don't know what else to do.
You
It's
you
like,
searching you searching for answers at this
I'm right.
point.
It's like, all right, I'm gonna go to church. And so, and sure enough, this one Sunday, out of sheer desperation, I went to this church, and it was a church that my mother went to. I didn't have any thought of, like, let's go to this church versus that church. I didn't have any thought of that. I just was
Mhm,
like, I'm desperate. So I go to this church this one Sunday, and it was so packed that I had to go to the overflow. And I didn't know
mm,
what was going on. I was just, you know, I said, fine. I go to the overflow and I find out. Now, I don't know if you guys if you know who Les Brown is, but
from Liberty City.
come on now. And Les Brown is the speaker
Oh, mm,
that day, that particular Sunday. And he so I don't listen, I'm just gonna tell you, this is kind of what happened for me. He gave a set of scriptures that literally defined where I was. And he was like, are you in despair and pressed down? Are you shaken, but you're not forsaken? And, like, everything he said, just I was like, yes, I'm pressed on every side. Yes, I feel forsaken. Like, yes, that's it. And so from that point, after my grandmother's words to me, and then hearing that, I began to just sort of lift my head. I was
mm,
like, okay, okay. And so that particular church had this amazing bookstore. And I went in there and I would just find books to read about, I don't know, about anything, like, just like whatever's jumped out at me, I would read. And
mhm,
it began to cause me to sort of, like, turn the focus from what was happening in my life, what was happening outside of me, and helped me put the focus back on me. And
Mm,
I mean, I read everything from Think and Grow Rich
mhm,
to um Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I was like, that's Napoleon Hill. There's another Norman Vincent Peale. Like I just anything I could grab that got my attention, I would read. And
mhm,
so a positive, what was that Norman Vincent Peale book? The Power of Positive Thinking or something, just like
mhm, mhm,
anything that would just begin to turn my focus from out there to in here. And
mm,
then at some point in that process, I realized that it was all me. Like
mm,
all I was doing was pushing me out, and the results that I was getting were obvious. Right? Like I was like, so it's me.
mhm,
Huh,
mhm,
it's me. And so from there I began to do the work that was specific to me. And
mm,
whether it was getting in the mirror, telling myself I loved me and that I was worthy, or if it was affirmations, like just whatever it took. And
mhm,
once again, this wasn't for me to find a mate. It was just for me to stop hurting, to
mm,
start feeling good and better about myself. And in that process, along the way, I learned some things. And
mhm,
so it was those things that, caused me to go, okay, and start to recognize patterns that, I grew up in a single family home, a single parent home. So naturally, here I come creating a single parent home. Like I just started putting the pieces together of
mm,
recognizing the patterns that I was subconsciously repeating because that's what I have been programmed was life. Like this is
mm,
life. So not to beat up on anyone, but that was how life was programmed and presented to me. So I'm
mhm,
living my own Truman show. Like, like, well, this is life. And
yeah,
so this is how life should be. And so once I realized that I had simply recreated, I want to say, my mother's life, I had to then say, stop finally, probably for the first time and go, but I don't want that for my life. Like
mm,
maybe that was okay for her life,
yeah,
but is that something I want to carry over into my life? And so then it became a part of purposeful planning what I could possibly have for me because that's
mm.
what I wanted.
You said some key points. One thing I want to go back to is when people come when people come to me, they're full of confusion, guilt, shame, things of that nature.
Mhm.
And I often remind people, and I want to remind you too. I always like to change the word mistake to lessons learned
Mhm.
because a mistake is in my brain how I assume it shouldn't have happened. And if it has to be a cause and effect for us to learn through any process. And now you was talking about earlier before we started filming or recording, you was talking about the book of Exodus or Deuteronomy. You was talking about Moses being spoken to by
Mhm.
God during the burning bush and everything. But we forget that Moses killed a man before he became Moses, right?
Mhm.
So he had a lot of things to happen to him before he even got to the burning bush, right?
Amen.
And so I like to remind people like we all have lessons learned. My daddy used to always say, you gon' he never used the word mistake. He said, you're gonna learn the lesson, whether you're gonna pay for it with your time, you're gonna pay for it with your money, or something else. But you're gonna remember that lesson and it's gonna make you a better person in hindsight, right? And
Mhm.
that's the goal when you work with someone like us and you start doing that inner work and not repeating those patterns so you continue to get those lessons learned. Like,
Mhm.
it's almost like that
Mhm.
what is a hard head make a soft behind.
Behind.
How many times you gonna keep on repeating those lessons
Exactly.
before you start to say, it's not them, it's not him, it's not her, it's not even my parents at this point. It's me. My parents did the best they could with what they had, with what they knew.
Mhm.
And like
Absolutely.
you said, your mother did what she had to do. but what she knew to do with what she
Yeah,
had, right? And
exactly.
so once we start having compassion for where we came from and have compassion for ourselves, then we can
Mhm,
start that work. When you said you listened to Les Brown, you heard your grandmother, it was that aha moment like, okay,
mhm,
all right, Kim,
mhm.
stop being this victim. It's
Right,
not what happened to you, it's what's happening for you, right?
yes,
So what lessons do I need to learn? So when I do get married and have that
mhm,
daughter, I know how to pour into her, right?
right, right,
So
right.
and and I love that you didn't do the work with the expectation attached to it.
Mm,
You wasn't the expectation was not to find that husband.
right.
What you was just going like the one thing after the next. Okay, this book poured into me. Okay, let me get my hands on another book. This
Mhm,
speaker poured into me. Let me listen to another speaker.
mhm,
And subconsciously, you are rewiring your brain, rewiring how you think about yourself.
mhm.
You're doing that inner work, but again, without the attachment of if,
Right,
when, how.
correct. Like, I
It just
promise
happened.
it was not in that process, and I'll tell you what was really key for me as I
Mm,
was as I as I can look back now and see clearly the steps, how one thing was leading to another. But
uh,
back then I was just sort of distrusting, right? Like, I'm just
mm,
open, I'm letting myself be led
mm,
in the best way possible. Um
mm,
when so like I said, there were books, there were back then it was tapes. Like, I'm just listening, and like I'm I'm
mhm,
I'm a sponge, but I'm slowly starting to come out of it. And
mhm,
I got to a point, and this was, I think, this is this was the key moment, was I got to a place of forgiveness.
mm. For who?
Everybody. My
Mm,
parents, the guy,
mm,
myself,
mm,
everyone up until that point, like,
mm,
literally I had to start to go through the forgiveness process. Now, here's the thing. I didn't even know, like, I know it now that that's what it was, but I knew,
mm,
like in that, like, the Lord was showing me how forgiveness works. Like, it's a process. It's not
mhm, mm,
because
mhm.
the key
It don't
thing
work
that
like
I
that.
had to get a hold of was that it wasn't forgiveness didn't mean that what they did was okay.
Mhm,
It meant
mhm,
I cut the strings to my heart about it
mm,
and let it go.
mm,
It didn't mean that it was okay, because probably wasn't. But
mhm,
but it no longer had that power over me. I literally gave it over. I literally let it go. I literally stopped judging them with, my 100% perfect hindsight. I literally just was like, you know what? I started with, I am willing to forgive. Like, it wasn't
mm,
even like I forgive. It was like I'm willing. I'm willing to forgive. And then it was, you know what? This Me holding on to all of that is not serving me. It's keeping me
mm,
stuck. Thinking about them, it's keeping me stuck rehearsing that hurt and that pain over and over and over again.
mhm,
I'm done. Like, I just, it was like, so however long that process took, I don't know, but it was a process. But when I got to the other side of it, it was sort of like the slate was wiped clean.
mm,
I no longer held that dude up as some sort of ideal. I was no longer mad at my father for being my father, for being the way he was, because you know what? They attracted each other because of the stuff that was going on with them.
mhm, mhm,
And then I'll even tell you this. I mean, I want to say in 2025, finally got real revelation and respect and gratitude and thankfulness that my parents were my parents.
mm,
Because if my parents weren't my parents, I wouldn't have this message.
mm,
As you said, we're talking to the people. You guys are getting set free and getting understanding because my parents were their imperfect selves, right?
mm,
Like, and so because my parents were my parents, I have the personality that I have. I have the ability to speak to people where they are in their relationships and cut through all
Mhm.
the muck and mire so that you can choose right, so that you can finally get the love that you deserve and desire.
Mm.
If my parents had grown up, loving and I love you and you love me and this is what I say. I would be my daughter. but, but that wasn't my testimony, right?
Mhm.
So my daughter has the freedom of love and self to love animals and horses and huskies and she has that freedom to be like the twirling ballerina. Like she didn't have those issues. Like
Yeah.
she just doesn't have them. And it's
Yeah.
like she can't even make them up because that's never been her world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so but if my parents weren't my parents,
Mhm.
like my daughter wouldn't even be you know what I'm saying? It's like I had to just get
Exactly.
so grateful and thankful that this was the way I came.
Yes.
2025. 2025.
When people say I went to counseling, I went to coaching for, a year or two, growth doesn't stop. Like you continuously do the work until you take your last breath.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So whether it's 2025 or 2028, you're going to have another revelation then. But you are allowing yourself to be open to receive those downloads, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, but I want to go back to when you was talking about forgiveness, and you made a key point when you was saying that when you didn't even, it was a process. It just didn't start like I forgive you.
Mhm.
The first step was just being willing. You didn't know how that forgiveness looked. You don't know how that process looked because forgiveness look different for every person,
Mhm.
depending on what their relationship to you were or is.
Right. Right.
So, but you just opened up yourself to just start to begin that process, whatever that looked like for each person in your life, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so by your offloading that weight, that heaviness of unforgiveness allowed you to attract. That was part of that attraction of your husband.
It
Because
was.
how can you forgive or how can you move on to the next person when you have all this weight? From past relationships that had nothing to do with the person you
Mhm.
want to attract in your life. And that's why
Right.
I always tell people, you don't attract what you say, you attract what you energetically, what your cup can hold.
Mhm.
If your cup can't hold forgiveness, because you're gonna even need you have to practice forgiveness in your current
In your
relationship.
relationships. Absolutely.
That's just how it is. So if you can't show forgiveness from where you came from, where do you think
You're
you
going.
about to go? So I
You're just
guess
gonna start repeating.
the
That's when
same
you start,
cycle.
you keep going around the mountain. You keep going around. And here's
Yes.
the good thing is that it's an open book test, right? At any point you
Yes.
can go, I'm not doing that anymore. Right? At any point you can go, hey, that's not working for me. Like really, like it's not working. But
Mm,
forgiveness is the pivot. And I say when I work with people and when I look back and see my progression is
mhm,
that I went through I went through those steps. And then when I hit forgiveness is the pivot that then sort of turns you to the possibilities. Because once I got on the other side of forgiveness, and like I said, the slate was clean, it was not until then that, like, in my heart, I thought, I am now ready to
mm,
see what is out there and what's possible for me. Like,
mm,
maybe now I'm ready. And so I'm gonna give everyone this is the secret sauce.
mm,
This is the secret sauce. And so at that point, that's when I began to dream.
mm,
And once again, I don't know where this kind of came from. I
mhm,
think in hindsight, it might have been the greatest salesman in the world from Og Mandino, but I'll tell you about that.
mhm,
I think that's kind of where I got this from, but I'm not sure. So I began to make a list of, and here's the most important thing I can probably say today,
mhm,
of the qualities and characteristics that I wanted my mate to have.
mm,
Can I just repeat that?
mhm,
Qualities, characteristics, not what kind of car does he drive,
mhm,
not how much money he makes, not what kind of house he has.
mhm,
Qualities, characteristics, because that's who he is,
mhm,
not what he has. What you have can come and go,
mhm,
but who you are remains true.
Mm.
Can I just say this part? This is another, let me just knock this sacred cow over. Is that when you deal with relationships, what I discovered is that like attracts like.
Mhm.
It's not opposites attract. I know we've
Mhm.
been told opposites attracts, but here's the opposite. One will be an introvert, one will be an extrovert.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
if you have the same values,
Mhm.
you guys will work.
Mhm.
That's the opposite. Because if two introverts were together, no one would talk. There'd be nothing to say. If two extroverts were together, no one would listen. So in the scheme, the opposites that are going to attract are going to be like introvert, extrovert. But you can't have opposite values
Mhm.
in a relationship that's leading to marriage. When I made that list, and it took me, it took me a minute. It wasn't like I sat down and went, I want him to have this, I want him to have that. I want him to be loyal. It wasn't like
Mhm.
that happened, but I really sat with it and processed and revised that list. I mean, I think it had at least 10 things on there. Like at least 10.
Mm.
That's what I tell my clients. At least 10
Mhm.
qualities, characteristics. And so I felt really good about that. Like, I was like,
Mm.
here it is, right? And
Yes.
this is the part I think I got from Augmentino, is that, and because I don't know where I knew to do this, and I saw something recently with about his works that I
Mhm.
went, oh, maybe this is where I got it. So here's what I did. And this is how the Lord tricked me. Because I made the list and I was hyped. I made the list.
Mhm.
And then he said, okay, Kim, here's what we're gonna do. And I was like, he was like, you're gonna become the list. And I went, say what? It's like, you're gonna become the list. And so I took each step, each quality in that
Mm.
on my list, and I
Mhm.
worked it into my life 30 days at a time.
Mm.
So here's an example. You'll love this. So one of the things I had on my list was that I wanted him to be cultured.
Mhm.
I thought that was great. Like, oh yeah, cultured, right?
What does that mean exactly? Culture. What does that mean?
He said, Kim. So now you're gonna spend the next 30 days, the next month or so, working on yourself being cultured.
Mm.
Wow. Huh. So here's what it looked like. I took myself to the finest restaurants I could afford
Mm. Mhm.
by myself.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
sat there, I tried this meal with that beverage.
Mhm.
Tried this. I didn't like that. I like this. I like that. I exposed myself to the best that I could where I was.
Mhm.
Um, I grew up in Detroit and we had what was called the Detroit Institute of Arts. So
Mhm.
I would go and look at the exhibits. I like this. I like this painting. I like paintings done this way.
Mhm.
I don't like paintings that way. I like I like the refinement. Like I just began to just pick and pull. I went to the symphony. I
Mm.
like the symphony. I was like, I like the symphony. I went to opera. I don't like opera, but I do
Mm.
like the symphony. Like I just I that's what I did. I took myself to these places to determine what I liked. Like
Mhm.
just this is what I like.
Mhm.
And so that was it actually became really fun. So now how did that manifest when I met my husband? Okay, here we go. This is how you know. Like this is how you know. Like this I'm telling you. So
Yeah.
I was becoming, right?
Mhm.
So when I meet my husband grew up in DC
Mhm.
and he was a member of Junior Symphony Orchestra. He played at Orchestra Hall. My
Mm.
mother-in-law is a classical pianist. My husband plays saxophone. He was in the band in college. Like music and that atmosphere
Mhm.
was very, very important in his upbringing. And so
Mm.
even now, like when I hear instruments and music and things like that, like that's still very important to him. Just like, just like what are you listening to? Well, he's listening to jazz, he's listening
Mhm.
to live music, like, so those things matter and have manifested. So it was like, so that's kind of he grew up in that kind of fruitful
Environment.
environment, right? Like
Yeah.
his mother being a pianist, right? So, you just that was the norm for
Mhm.
him. Music and that higher elevated sort of understanding and culture was normal for him.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, oh, you know, that really works. That stuff really works. It really, really happened. I was like, okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So there's other examples, but yeah, but that was kind of how things started to show up.
But you said again, I like you saying some key points. I want to go back. You said you before you even became the list, you had to be in the right heart and headspace to
Hmm.
even create a list that wasn't superficial,
Yes,
right?
that's good. That's good.
And so again, that goes through the work and the process, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because even if you're writing things that, like you said earlier, you came from a divorced household. My parents divorced when I was 2 as well.
Mm,
So we didn't grow up. I probably could count, besides your grandparents, they don't count because, they taught to stay together and stuff. But,
right.
I'm talking about like, growing up, like younger people, I could probably count maybe one or two relationships that was still, people was still married. So to go back to write and create a list that's something that you haven't even seen, but
Hmm.
you deserve because you've
Yeah.
done the work of what even if you never seen it, you know what you want. You may not know it's so easy to say what you don't want, but are you crystal clear of what you do want? And in 2018, I too wrote, I actually wrote a 2-page single space list letter to my future
Don't we know? Come
partner,
on, girl. Like, tell the truth.
and I put it in the 23rd Psalms, and I put it away. But so I did the list, but in that 2-year span, because I met in 2020, in that 2-year span, I just worked on myself. I just like you, I just worked on myself. I poured into myself. And the funny thing about my list is that when I finally met him, when we met and had our first date and everything, I thought he was gaslighting me. I was like, ain't nobody this nice. Something is not right. I don't know who this person is.
Hmm.
And when I actually called one of my best friends. I was like, yo, this guy is gaslighting me. I was like, he gonna arrive at the restaurant and save me a parking spot. Who does that? She was like, don't you want that? Don't you want someone to do that extra? And like you said, your husband, my partner, was raised the exact opposite. His parents are still together. His dad is the breadwinner. His mom took care of the house and the family. At
Hmm.
one point, they had a housekeeper. I was like, man, I was the housekeeper. Okay, so he plays sports and he make music. He loved music and stuff. But I was even though I was still doing the work, my emotional memory, like a muscle memory, was
Hmm.
used to people who trauma bond, that toxicity, right? Like, your daddy don't beat up on your mama, like you don't cheat on your mama. Like, it was so far fetched to me. Like, your parents still together and they happy. Like, well, I could not for the life of me understand that at that point. But even why, and we've been together 6 years now, and so we're still growing together. We're growing as an individual, and we're growing as a couple to
Couple.
build that empire, right? To build that legacy. And so that's why I wanted to say the process
Hmm.
continues to grow, and
Hmm.
we're all still a work in progress. I always use the analogy, we're like building a car while we driving it. Some people might have the steering wheel on and the seats. Some people might have the frames on. Some people still got everything just laid out. We all trying to figure it out together.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the part that you say is so important is that you didn't necessarily know where to start. You just became open and available to start. And that snowballed
Absolutely.
into so many synchronicities where you're meeting Les Brown and you're reading these books, Rich and Grow, and all these different things. But the first step is just you being open and saying, basically, I surrender.
Right. I can't do it. I can't do
I
it.
can't do
Like,
it.
I cannot save myself. Like, I'm gonna need some assistance here. and sure enough, almost like, angelic reinforcement. Like just
Mhm.
there's really no other way to describe it, because there was nothing in my growing up that said, "Hey, you're the one that's going to be married happily for 30 years." Like there was
Mm.
nothing, like when all that stuff was going down, I was not the candidate. You got a glimpse of how I was, like
Mhm.
I wasn't the candidate that said, "Hey, you know what? You're the one that's going to have a happy family."
Mhm.
Just it was so far fetched. And what did that even look like, right? So
Mhm.
I think when I sort of got to the point of really sort of exercising who I was becoming and then letting my life start to reflect back to me where I was, like I kind of
Mm.
got to that point where I was like, let me, like, I'm like playing with it now, right? I'm going,
Mhm.
okay, let me see what what's gonna get brought to me, right? And so
Yes.
there was I laugh and I say this to people and I'm like, look, there's gonna come before you meet the one, there's gonna come a guy or gal that's gonna test you because they're gonna look really good on paper.
Mhm.
Because you starting to do things now. I'm starting to become the list. And then
Mhm.
people start to come up to you and go, "What you doing?
Something different. You
Something
got a
different
glow
about
about
you.
you.
What you doing? You dating? You got a boyfriend? Like what you doing?" Like people, and so that sort of feedback was very important because I was like, oh, things are different.
Mhm.
Like I'm presenting a better version of myself that's
Mm.
catching everyone's attention. So that was
Mhm.
letting me know that the work I was doing for me on the inside was starting to be reflected
Yes.
outwardly. So
Yes.
even now, it's funny because people that I know that love me and adore me and all that, but they will tell me that they were like, "Kim, you're such a bright light," and I was like, "Okay, okay, I get it." And so that feedback was really important. So when I'm starting to go out, I'm starting to meet guys, I'm starting to in
Mhm.
my process, I'm going out, but then I got to the point and I didn't realize how close I was, but but hindsight now, I can help people cut their time in half, right? But I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's this guy, and he comes along, and he's really great on paper.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, for my example, really great on paper. Like, really great on paper. Like, I'm in Detroit, and this guy, the Motor City, this guy
Mhm.
that came on my path was about to open car dealerships.
Mm.
I was like, picked me up in his Porsche.
Mm.
Had several homes around the city, about 6'3",
Mm.
CPA, had his own business. Huh. I'm like, so my inward work has obviously gotten much
Mhm.
better, much stronger,
Mhm.
much more stable, you know, but in my
Mhm.
heart, something wasn't right. Because now, mind you, remember, at this point, I have a son, and
Yeah.
I was not the mom. Somehow, I was not the mom that let my son meet the people I was dating. Like I was very
Mhm.
clear.
Of
Like I was
course.
very clear, right? Like
Yeah.
no, you can know that he exists, but you don't get to interact with him. Like
Mm-mm. No.
period, the end. Like no.
Exactly.
So I
Yeah.
was very clear and didn't let any of the guys that I went out with even see my son. Like it's like, no, I have a son. Here's a picture, but you're not, no,
Interacting with
you're
him.
not worthy. I haven't
No.
deemed you worthy to be in
Thank
his
you.
presence, right?
Yes. Protect your child. Yes.
Yeah, like I mean, I was completely serious about that. Like I was just,
Mhm.
I'm not playing that game. He's not about to have Uncle Johnny and Uncle Bobby. No, no, ma'am, no, sir. That is not where we were going. Because really, at that point, I had gotten very serious with myself. Like, no, 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 we're
Mhm.
really looking to be married.
Mhm.
While he's maybe 18 months at that point. I'm like, yeah, no, 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 no. Mm-mm. So I had gotten really clear about that. So I didn't I
Mhm.
didn't play that coming in and out of his life.
Mhm.
No. So when I get to the guy who looks really good on paper,
Mhm.
and he kept telling me how great he was with kids, and there were still some red flags. He was very narcissistic.
Mm.
He wanted to know how everything from how I felt about him through my lens. Tell me why I'm so great.
Mm.
Like what? Tell me what you like about me.
Mm.
So I got to the point with him, and I here's the thing. I was like, if he's not the one, how am I going to tell my mother he's not the one? Right?
Yeah.
Because your mother's going, I got car dealership and
Yeah.
CPA and he got a couple cars and da, what? So I mean, I was kind of like, if he not the one, who is the one? Like, who can be the
Mm.
one?
Mm.
And it was sort of like the final test because I had to get really true.
Yeah.
I had to look at my list and go, is this your list?
Mm.
Like, not what he had. That's why I can speak so strongly about it, right? Not what he has,
Yep.
who he is.
Yes. Yes.
So I said, okay, at this point, I have to figure this out one way or the other. So I let him meet my son and I watched him with my son.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, he's not the one.
Mm.
He's not the one. Because what he thought he was really good, I saw control.
Mm.
I saw no flexibility, like sit down,
Mm.
be quiet, don't touch that. And I'm like, I'm not seeing, oh, I'm so great with kids. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not seeing that. And so I realized that either I would accept, either I was going to compromise. That's the word I'm looking for. I was
Mm.
either going to compromise
Mm.
and accept that because he looked so good on paper, or I was going to have courage to give him back.
Mm.
And I think that was probably the greatest act of courage up until that point that
Mm-hmm.
I had ever exercised because, and it's like I said, it's an open book test, you know,
Yes.
but I've done this work and and I've attracted this great guy. He's a great guy
Mm-hmm.
for someone,
Yeah.
just not me. And it was like sort of at that moment, like, what do you choose to do, Kim? And
Mm.
I was like, if I compromise, I'm going to let this great work, it's all going to come to naught and I'm going to have to go around the mountain again. I know
Yep.
this, like, I know this, or I could give it back. And so I gave it back. Let me give you this window of time. I decided to give him back right after my birthday. So my birthday was in May, the end of May.
Mm. Mm.
And I was like, um, I don't know. Um, and I remember driving down the street and I said, either there's someone who's going to love me for me, or I'm done. I'm good. Like, I'm good with me. And if
Yeah.
someone comes by that loves me for me, great. If someone doesn't come by, I still love
You
me.
okay?
I'm good. Right? And I just let it go. I just let it go. I was like, I'm good. Like, I'm done. Like, like I was just, and I meant it from the depths of my soul. I was like, you know what? I'm good. Driving down the street. I said, somebody's gonna love me for me or not at all. Like, I'm done.
Mm.
And so that's the end of May. A few weeks later, my cousin's getting married, and I think it was June 17th,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And these few weeks, I'm just chilling. I'm like, whatever. So it's the rehearsal dinner. And I was like, and here's the other key that was powerful is that my cousin was getting married, but she was supposed to get married the year before.
Mm.
She and her fiance, her husband, decided they weren't ready to get married. And the week before the wedding, they called it off. So she had to call
Mm-hmm.
everybody because the invitations had already gone out. She had to call everybody to go, yeah, no, we're not getting married. And I
Mm.
was like, oh, bet. I get it. She was like, yeah, we need to work on a few things. So we're not going to get married right now. We're going to get married, later. So that
I love
later
that.
was a few weeks after I let my hands go. I was like, I'm done.
Mm.
So we go. I remember going to the rehearsal and I didn't want to go because we had gone through all the excitement and the stuff the year before, with the
Yeah.
shower and the blah blah blah. So I was kind of like, you know what? Okay, let's just get this done. But I was like, I don't really want to go to the rehearsal dinner. I really don't. But then something said, I don't know, you might meet somebody, and I was like, right.
Yeah.
So I go to the rehearsal dinner, and I go to rehearsal dinner because it's what I cousin's actually getting married, and I see this guy, and I think, oh, that must be the cousin I never met. He kind of looks like my uncle. That must be the cousin I never met. And so I'm just sort of like, "Hi," and the guy's kinda like, "Hey," and I'm just, and it turns out that that was, my cousin's husband's best friend from DC.
Mm.
And we ended up, because it was the rehearsal, we ended up walking down the aisle together.
Wow. Okay.
And the night at the rehearsal dinner, we're at somebody's house and we're watching a basketball game or something, and then he's sitting next to me on the couch, and you know how guys do the stretch and the
Yeah.
arm, and I was like, huh, that's really interesting. By this point, I found out that he was not my cousin. Okay, like, okay, he's not my
No
cousin.
relation.
No relation, no relation. But that began the most wonderful love story, because the next day at the wedding, we didn't get to walk down the aisle together, and we felt like something was wrong. Like, we were like, I'm supposed to walk down the aisle with you. Like, why are we not walking down the aisle? You know, and literally from that day till today, 30 years later, we've been together. Like, we've
I
been
love
together.
I
So
love it.
and I like, literally, we just had like the most wonderful time together,
Yeah.
laughing, joking, like just all of it, and it was so dynamic. So my cousin got married in June. He still lived in DC. I was in Detroit, but by August of that year, we were engaged.
Wow.
So 6 weeks, boom, 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 and like,
30
there you
years
go.
later,
30
y'all
years
still
later, three
together.
more kids, like, just all of that, we're still together. And I can say this about my husband, is that it's he and I know this might sound crazy, but he and I have always been easy.
Mm.
He and I have always been easy. You know,
Mhm.
life challenges, raising kids, working, all that kind of stuff. I mean, like, that part's challenging,
Yeah.
but he and I have always been easy. Like, even if I was mad or he was mad, like, we could still stop and talk.
Yes.
Like, there's not been argument, like, there hasn't been intense fellowship. There's been times when, early on, I wanted to try to huff and puff, and he go, "Yeah, I'm not arguing." He's like, "So when you're ready to have a conversation, calm down and come talk to me."
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We gotta continue to work because sometimes that emotional memory like to pop up sometimes.
Mhm,
Like, wait,
mhm,
no, this is
mhm,
not how we communicate.
right, and so in that process, like, but when I think back, like I said, life was, brought us certain things, but when it got down to whether he and I were going to be able to make it work, then it was like, okay, let's talk, let's get a plan. So it was
Yeah.
always us
Yeah.
against the situation, not the
Yes.
situation pulling us apart. And I mean, there were people, times, all kinds of things. But when we got down to it, it was like, yeah, no, how are we going to deal with this? And as long as we had each other's back, then there was a way for us to always move forward. So
Yeah.
it was worth the wait of letting God bring it, as opposed to me trying to go out and make him happen, or choose him, when really he needed to see me and choose me
Mm.
in that whole process. So,
And I
all right.
love how it come full circle. And as we're a little over an hour, we're about to end, but I want to say this. First of all, thank you, Kim, for your beautiful um experience. And because that's a vulnerability to share,
Mhm.
but your transparency can help so many people. But I want to end with this. You said a good point. You said that, you didn't choose him. He chose you, but you was in that space to be chosen. But he chose you because you chose you first. And I love that. And with that said, again, thank you for coming on the Dr. Freda Power Session. I am Dr. Freda, and I will see you next week. Kim, you are amazing. Thank you.
Bless you. Bless you.